In 2017, the president of Pinterest deleted the Facebook app from his phone after secretly hiding away in the pantry to check for the 100th time that day his emails, messages, status updates, and news alerts. Other people's perfect lives, political discourse, Twitter rants. It all just became too much for him to handle. Something had to change. He needed a moment to think. But it just so happened to be a light bulb moment that changed his life and the lives of millions of other tech addicts forever.
I knew I couldn't go back.
You just put it out there.
She said you've got less than a year to live.
Just dug even deeper.
Luck is the residue of design.
Nobody else was doing it, so why couldn't I?
That was the turning point.
Welcome to the BUCKiT Podcast with Phil Keoghan. Every week I talk to mavericks, disruptors, and innovators. People who ditch the excuses, swerve off the predictable road, and epitomize what it means to tick it before you kick it.
But I was stuck to my phone scrolling through a social media feed, and I couldn't get off. I couldn't stop scrolling.
Tim Kendall is best known as the former president of Pinterest. In 2012, after leaving Facebook, he joined the hugely popular web-based image bulletin board to build up its non-existent advertising business. And in just 5 years, he helped the company generate over $472 million. Tim and his team at Pinterest gained a reputation for their successful marketing campaigns and generating all of their ad products, including the promoted pin. Tim also had unconventional work habits. He refused to use his phone or laptop at meetings and chose paper printouts over electronic ones. Pretty unusual in a company that relies on people to be attached to their handheld devices and laptops. But his own phone habit was getting to him, and eventually he cut loose to start a very successful app called Moment, designed to help people detox and take back their time, all while using their smartphones. Ironically, it's working, and Tim recently unplugged long enough to tell me about this fascinating approach to what most of us are doing all day long, incessantly using our smartphones. Here we are. So I was very interested to see what you were going to wear today. And you turned up in a white T-shirt, and now I'm wondering maybe if I put one of those special UV lights on it or something, there'll be some message.
Yeah.
Because I know about you wearing
Right.
T-shirts with messages, and I thought that's such as you said, a really simple way of getting a message across. So tell us, you had the same T-shirt. Everybody must have thought you were wearing the same T-shirt every day, but it was the same. You had many of the same T-shirts.
I have many of the same. They just said the same thing.
Yeah. So tell us what that was all about.
Well, it was, so when I was at Pinterest, I started at Pinterest, there were probably a dozen people at the company. And, one of the things that, a dozen people, 20 people, 30 people, you can communicate pretty easily, right? You can get that whole group together. A lot of times you can fit them in the same room and you can tell them, hey, this is the plan. Sometimes you can do it every day.
Yeah.
But when you start to get to hundreds of people and we got up to, before I left, Pinterest was almost 1,800 people. The ways in which you can sort of communicate with people get diminished, certainly in like a high fidelity way. And so one of the things that I just started to think about creative ways that I could impart and communicate messages to people that I wanted them to internalize. And one of the biggest messages that we wanted folks to think about who were building Pinterest was we wanted them to focus. Because most people just do too many things kind of average.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, let's really get folks to start really thinking in a mindset of, okay, there are 10 things I could do. I'm going to cut it back to 3. And what we really wanted them to do is say, okay, now I'm going to cut it back to 1.
So you would wear a T-shirt that said focus. And then that was it? That
was it. And so I wore it every day. And I would tell, when I did orientation for new employees, I would give a brief explanation for why I wore it, which is sort of had this meaning of communicating a message. And, oh, by the way, wearing the same shirt every day also creates focus in your life because you don't have to think about what you're going to wear every day.
Yeah, it must just, exactly. You don't have to wake up in the morning and be bothered with what am I going to wear. So what was it, jeans and a T-shirt?
It was jeans and a T-shirt. And now, I've got to figure out with Moment what that is going to be. But truth be told, it's typically jeans and a white T-shirt. Just doesn't say anything yet.
And Zuckerberg used to wear a tie, right? Like he used to just wear a simple tie.
1 year he did. For a whole year, for 365.
The same tie?
No, he varied the tie.
But what was the symbol of
he
that?
He was trying to send people a signal that it was in 2009.
I see.
Which was sort of a seminal year for Facebook. Like there was some concerns about user growth, which seems wild in retrospect, and actually some concerns about really turning the corner with the business. And so he felt like it was the year that we were going to have to really turn the corner. And so he said, I'm going to wear a tie every day. So everyone gets that message loud and clear.
Tell us about your time before Pinterest, being at Facebook and then working with him and what you learned and how you transitioned.
Yeah. So Facebook was fascinating and working with Mark was incredibly rewarding and stimulating. And even when he was 19, I certainly had a sense that he was very special and had a really remarkable ability to see where the world was going and really just had a lot of conviction around connecting the entire world.
How did that manifest itself, like day to day? Like, how did you see that happening?
Well, he talked in very clear terms about it. He talked in big terms about what it would mean for the world. I mean, he talked very early on about the fact that if people were connected and there was more transparency in the world, right? There were fewer sort of like opaque pieces of information, and everybody kind of knew what was going on. And in my tribe, there was enemy tribes. With your tribe, we could have some sort of link and talk to one another. There actually would possibly be less conflict in the world. I mean, he really believed that if you created this substrate across the world, that could be possible. And you wouldn't know that from reading the media today and what people say about Facebook. But look, there are a lot of things that happen as a result of Facebook and other social media services in the world in terms of destabilizing situations and forces that weren't good for communities or countries.
Well, I really do believe that the world feels closer, more connected as a result of things like Facebook. Just since doing The Amazing Race, I've been doing The Amazing Race for 2 decades. When we first started, you could say Thailand and people wouldn't even know what part of the world that was, or even Germany, like to place it on a world map. Now people are talking back, like people can enter into a conversation online. So it has made, I think particularly for Americans, more aware of the rest of the world.
Right. I think that's absolutely right. I actually think in some parts of America, I think people who grew up on the coast, I did not. I grew up in the middle of the country in Colorado. When I went to college and met all these people who grew up on the coast, they didn't know what the hell was going on in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell which one was Wyoming and which one was Colorado. Really educated people.
Flyover countries.
They
would literally go from one coast to the other and they would just look down.
Yeah. I just think the United States and then pockets within the United States are just very provincial, blinders on mentality. And that's accepted. And you're totally right. Folks that I went to college with who grew up outside the United States, a much more global and broad perspective of what the world was like.
I've seen some quotes of you talking about this, just the idea that there are a lot more voices talking about what's going on. Obviously, sometimes that can get us into trouble because they're not necessarily filtered.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know exactly what you're reading, but at least it has opened up a dialogue.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we're just in a really tough phase of adolescence of a lot of these tools coming of age. And I think Facebook absolutely, and Mark bear some responsibility for perhaps being a little bit reckless in terms of how we got to where we are.
It'd be fair to say, though, that he also couldn't anticipate just how big it was going to get.
No.
Even with his amazing brain.
No, correct.
I don't know if he could. Who would predict that we would be living in this, in the world we're living in?
You wouldn't. I mean, when I joined Facebook, we had a couple million users, and we were terrified of MySpace. We had 5 million users, and MySpace had 120 million, and it appeared they were going to eat the whole world.
I can't remember the last time I heard the words MySpace.
When I tell people this, they're like, what?
MySpace?
MySpace?
There are people who don't even know what MySpace is.
I know. Right? But it was really dominant in 06, 07. So I was at Facebook to answer your original question. I was there for almost 5 years. And
why did you come over? What was it that excited you about being part of Facebook?
I was in graduate school, and I loved the intersection of these new consumer technologies. Google was really dominant at this point. Yahoo was a huge brand. And I always thought what was very interesting about these companies was how they were going to make money. And so I'd heard about the group of people who got together and figured out how to monetize Google. And I just sort of imagined, God, there's got to be a new company that needs something like that done for them now. And it was a little bit of a fairy tale. Like I called a couple people, and they recommended, oh, you should talk to Facebook. You know, they're pretty small, but they'll need a business. And they happen to be hiring someone, a product person, to basically help them figure out how they're going to make money. Facebook wasn't really a high-profile company at that point. So it's not like that. I mean, today when Facebook wants to hire someone, even 5 years ago, they can get hundreds of people applying. But I think in this case, it wasn't really necessarily a sought-after job. I remember I graduated from business school and went right to Facebook, and I was certainly the butt of some people's jokes in my business school class.
Really?
Oh, yes. What is this?
What a waste of your degree.
Why are you going to a college? Why are you going to a college website? That
Really?
seems weird.
That's what
I'm 100%.
Wow.
But that's the nature
The beauty
of these
of
things.
hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the beauty of hindsight.
It's so wonderful. So you were there for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then what led you to Pinterest?
I left Facebook. I took a little bit of time off. I got married, and then I got introduced to Ben Silbermann and Evan Sharp, who were the founders of Pinterest, and was just so compelled by their vision of what they wanted to build. And what they wanted to build was a tool that could help people discover things that they loved or things that they didn't even know that they loved, and then figure out how to go make that real in life. So if you found out you loved, a certain kind of, crock pot cooking, you could go out and then make a bunch of crock pot recipes and eat it. And so there was this amazing vision around really kind of any domain of interest. We're like, look, you can find something that's really going to light you up, that's really going to help you figure out how to actualize yourself in life, and we're going to help you go do that thing.
So it's about making those connections for you.
Yeah. And it was a powerful vision, and they both reminded me of the moments I had with them early days reminded me of the moments I had with Mark early days, where I would go home, so excited I couldn't sleep, and I just thought, God, I'm in the room with
You're on the cutting edge of
special people doing some special stuff, and I get to be there and help them. And so when I met them, I was sold kind of from the get-go.
It was like they're modern day pioneers.
Yeah.
Going into the unknown. And the potential is endless.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's going to take you.
And they were also, so many companies, this is like 2012-ish. So many tech companies were thinking through the lens of, okay, Phil, how do we get you on our service for as long as we can? How do we lock you in? Okay, we're going to start showing you pictures of attractive women, and then car crashes. Car crashes will keep you on longer. And that they were starting to see that there was a place for the counterweight to that.
Mm-hmm. More of a passionate appeal.
Correct.
Than just the train wreck appeal of,
correct.
Oh, what's that?
Yes.
But more like something that got
and it was you focused. I mean, we literally had people tell us, when I'm on Facebook, it's them time.
Yeah.
Pinterest is me time.
Yeah.
It was about the individual and trying to basically help them design a life and imagine a broader life than what they had today, which was pretty empowering and awesome to work on.
And while you were there, things exploded. I read that it was a $25 million company in 2014 and then went to $472 million the year that you left in 2017.
Yeah.
What an explosion. What was it that you did, you think, to help? What was your big contribution? How did you thread the needle there? Because obviously you helped.
Well, I think one of the things that I feel like I helped a lot with was I think I helped establish a really important culture.
You were in t-shirts again? What were you?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we believed, which was a little bit antithetical to Silicon Valley, was that that two things could happen in a company. You could be tough on people and hold people accountable, but not be a jerk to them in the process. And we thought that was pretty important. And that really came out of a bunch of conversations that I had with Evan and Ben about experiences we had previously in our careers with heavy-handed managers and leaders who we just thought, God, they didn't
get it.
They didn't get it. And they didn't have to be that way. Oh, and we had PTSD for a year after we got yelled at.
Right.
And that wasn't helping anybody. That wasn't creating any shareholder value. And so what if we created a norm at a company that if you were going to give someone feedback, if I was going to give you feedback about something, it had to be about the work. It couldn't be about you. It couldn't be, couldn't be a personal affront.
A constructive piece of criticism.
Which takes more time.
Yes.
It's harder.
Well, you have to dig a lot deeper because now you've got to understand what went wrong.
Yeah.
And then give suggestions about how to go forward.
I used to say in orientation when I was explaining this as kind of one of our company norms, I used to say, look, it's go slow to go fast. We're going to go slow so we can build trust. And so I can be really careful about how I tell you, how I give you constructive feedback. But I'm going to do it in a way that's very compassionate and caring. Guess what that's going to let us do? We're going to have a bond, we're going to have trust, and we're going to go way faster later.
And giving people autonomy and letting them own something, right? Giving them that sense of ownership, and taking that responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think, I helped with that. I think, helped with growing the company. We raised about $1.5 billion in financing, and I was involved in that.
That's a lot of money, right?
It's a lot of money.
Okay. Just checking. So you obviously had a very successful time there. And then what was the impetus for you to then want to leave? Because a couple of times now you've left two major companies that you've helped to grow the success with. And
I think that I'm learning that I really like the formative stage of these companies where the paint's not dry yet. You're still really shaping what the ethos of the company is going to be like. And you're trying to figure out the business, you're trying to figure out how to scale and to grow. And I think there's just a natural point at which I'm less energized by these businesses when they get to be billions of dollars in revenue and thousands of people. So that was one piece. The other piece, which was probably a much bigger driver, was I've always wanted to start a company on my own and run a company. And I probably 2016, 2017, I started really noticing my relationship with my phone was not particularly healthy. And it coincided with my wife and I having two young kids over this span of time, and just having these moments where I thought, I am effing addicted to this device.
was this the moment where you found yourself in the pantry?
I mean, that wasn't just one moment.
Okay.
Like that's a vignette that recurred.
I read that. I was like, wow. So you're in the pantry, your kids are out, and you're thinking there's something wrong here.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Well, I'm having this moment where I know I want to be a good dad. I want to be engaged and get down on the ground and play with my kids. I know that, and that's a value I want to live and embody. Even in that moment, I wanted to. But I was stuck to my phone, scrolling through a social media feed, and I couldn't get off. I couldn't stop scrolling.
When we talk about this addiction, this device addiction,
yeah,
is it fair to say that it is as addictive as heroin or sex addiction? Or, I mean,
I think it's tough. I mean, this gets out of my depth in terms of the science, but I do think addictions broadly fall into two categories, in that there's sort of substance addiction, where like there's chemical addiction at play, and then there's behavioral addictions, process addictions they're sometimes called, which sex falls into that category, food falls into that category, shopping falls into that category. Those are process addictions. Those are very real, serious behavioral addictions that ruin people's lives.
Yeah, hoarding
And
is the addiction to be
yeah.
holding it. You can't let go.
And I think the device usage, unhealthy phone usage, and it's important. There are plenty of people. Well, I don't know if there are plenty. There are some people who use their phone in healthy ways consistently, but I think this unhealthy usage is absolutely an addiction.
It's prevalent.
It's prevalent.
And we're witnessing it every single day in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not even going to pretend that I might not be addicted to my phone too, because it's such a big part of what I do in my life.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm working on this problem all day long.
Yeah.
And
You're still working on it.
I'm still working on the problem.
And it's interesting that you came from these two platforms
I
that encouraged people to connect, and yet it's the very thing that you wanted to start a business in was the antithesis of that. Like, get away from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I wasn't putting it in these terms when I got started on Moment a year or so ago.
Great name, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, I didn't come up with it. But,
I know you didn't.
I love it.
I love the name.
It's awesome.
That name came from the creator of Moment.
Yeah, Keoghan Halesh.
And Kevin apparently was wanting to sort of monitor what was going to happen in his new marriage. Yeah. And he wanted to see, well,
how much time his wife was spending on her phone.
Am I married more to my phone or my wife? And so that was
the
sort of
impetus.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a seasoned entrepreneur, and he just happened upon this problem, and then he built this terrific, wonderful product that was way ahead of its time. He built this thing 4 years ago.
Really?
Before this was really kind of the topic du jour, and grew it. But by the time, we now have 8 million people have signed up for the product, but he grew it from nothing to millions of people.
So you approached him and you said, "Listen, I've always wanted to start my own company. I like this idea of Moment.
Yeah.
It's something I feel like I need to address."
I thought I was going to go build what and then I used his product, and I thought, well, he built what I was going to build, and he did a lot better job than.
And he's further ahead than you are.
He's way further ahead. And then I got in touch with him, and I really fell in love with him. I mean, he's this wonderful.
How old is he?
He's 29.
So he's a young guy. So he was like mid-20s when he came up with this?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, he's very special. He's a visionary and a wonderful engineer and a wonderful product thinker, and actually a terrific. I think we are great partners. And so, I approached him about a year ago and said, "Hey, I really wanted to build a company like this. You've already built it. What do you say I buy it and you keep working with me, and we'll try to make it bigger?"
So is that how it works now? You own the company. He works alongside you.
He still owns a good chunk of the company as well.
Right.
And that's the setup.
I read this study. It said that 70% of adults, they say, have a problem. And only 25 of those 70% are able to reduce their usage, right? So this addiction is so bad for some. It's linked to depression. It's this idea of missing out. And I always find that there seems to be a correlation between people who want to tell everybody that they're having a good time, and then those people who are just having a good time who couldn't care less about telling everybody that they're having a good time. Some want to post and let everybody know that, look what I'm doing. And others are like, I don't want you to know what I'm doing.
Right.
And it goes to this device.
Yeah.
We see it everywhere. Is it getting worse?
Well, we see in our data that it's getting worse. We've
How
got
could it
data
get
on
worse than
millions
it
of
is right
people.
now?
Well, look, worse is I suppose subjective, but I think that people are spending more and more time on their phones every year. And I want to be clear, like, they're not spending more and more time on their phones listening to your podcast or more and more time learning a new language, right? Because there are some really healthy, wonderful usages of the phone. It's a terrific utility and tool, and I think it's made our lives better in some really important ways.
So would it be fair to say it's not the amount of use with the device, it's the specific usage?
It's a specific usage in terms of how much time am I spending on the sorts of products or services where I feel like I've lost agency and decision-making power about when I pick it up and when I put it down. And in fact, in the near term, I'm unable to resist the temptation to use it, even though I know I'm not going to feel good about it in the medium term, and I don't like the long-term consequences. That's like, by the way, definitionally addiction.
Yeah.
That's like that. I mean, that's sort of the nature of being addicted to a substance. You know it's bad. You want to stop, but in the near term,
It's a quick fix.
the immediate thrill, the immediate high, it just supersedes all of that.
It's got to
And
be.
that's what we're seeing.
It's got to be really tough for young people whose brains are still developing, right? And they log on to see how many likes they got on a photo or what their friends are doing.
It's so
And
tough.
they're not mature enough to process all of that and sort of see that, well, maybe this person is also depressed, and suddenly they spiral into a really bad place.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, in fact, there's been some research that came out actually last month on preteens usage, heavy users, meaning 6-7 hours a day, which is quite a bit, although not uncommon. Preteens where they saw substantial thinning of the prefrontal cortex. So brain changes in an important part of the brain. And then there's some other research that came out in December, probably the most important research I think so far on device addiction, showed that they did it on college students, and they actually showed that in a population of people who were clinically depressed and were using social media in an inordinate amount, they brought them down to, they didn't cut it off. They said, Phil, we're going to have you use social media 30 minutes a day for 3 weeks. The vast majority of that population was no longer clinically depressed.
Wow, it's cheaper than Prozac.
Yeah. So, and that's why, I mean, that encapsulates the opportunity and why I'm working on the problem. I think we really can, if we can help people use their phone in a healthier way, we can give them back time, we can give them back their agency. I think they can live a more present and happier life.
Being present.
At a big, and we're not talking about a small scale problem. I mean, there are 4 billion smartphones out there.
Yeah.
And we're saying 2/3 or so think they have an issue, use it more than they want to, but only a quarter can reduce if they try. Like, that's a lot of people
That
who
is
are
a huge
helpless.
amount of people. U.S. adults have spent an average of 3.5 hours a day. And then they say that adults are really more in denial than, they blame their kids, but they're the ones that are really in denial.
Yeah, what we have found is that Moment, the app, tells you how much you use your phone on two fronts. The amount of time you spend on it per day, but also how many times you pick it up, which is an important dimension of usage, because some people can use their phone maybe an hour or two a day, which doesn't seem like a lot, but they pick it up 100 times. And they have a compulsivity and anxiety that comes from that behavior. So we have that as like sort of the scale, if you will, if I were to use the diet metaphor. And then we have all these guidelines and tips for how to basically reduce usage. So we have this coach that walks you through these daily exercises, which really help people get in touch with why they're using their phone so much. Because ultimately, our view is that the way that we can help Phil use his phone less is for him to understand what are the underlying triggers for why you're picking it up.
What's missing in your life that causes you to...
Were you bored? Were you sad? Were you lonely? And if so, what's the alternative to picking up your phone in that particular case? But the reason I got on this was that what we find is that the 20, 30-somethings who sign up for the coach and use it are actually able to reduce much more readily than the 40 or 50-somethings.
What do you think that is? More pliable brain?
I guess.
More open to ideas?
Yeah. More trainable, more coachable. I don't know.
Yeah. Some adults, they get stuck in their ways. You said about the news cycles, because, a lot of people are following, they're looking out for this news all the time. They're looking for the next big headline. And you said, I think that media today in its current phase is really emphasizing the negative and has kind of forgotten the good that happens every day. So it's just, if it bleeds, it leads constantly, right?
Absolutely.
Just pumping it out.
And unfortunately, that's what, I mean, there's some irony in all these media companies, lambasting Facebook for showing you the most sensational thing through their content engine. And it's the very thing that news organizations now are doing more and more, because it's what sells. It sells views, it sells consumption, and they have to sell ads against that.
I've read that we all look for news that tells us what we want to hear, meaning the bent, the glass that we're looking through.
Yeah.
You know, whether we have a right wing mentality or left wing, whatever. We want to read. We want to be reassured that what we're thinking about the way the world is working is right, and this helps to
correct. And it's interesting. I was talking to someone a month or two ago about this very thing, because clearly in this world of the internet and Facebook, where your news is personalized, right? It's an echo chamber. It's going to tell you basically your
really
views
good
are right and these views are wrong. And I had sort of thought, well, this must have started when news went onto the internet. And actually, they've done some research on this. The point at which this started, this kind of polarization, it happened when basically cable came online in a big way, and network news wasn't the only source of news.
It used to be that Walter Cronkite was the voice of America, and whatever he said went. And
that was the fact.
Right. And he was more impartial, to...
And now it's Fox and CNN. And you just go where you want to.
You go one way or you go the other. Or you're in the middle, I guess, with some of the independents, right?
Yeah.
But give us a sense of what's healthy and what's unhealthy with the use of a cell phone right now. Just because people are listening and they're thinking, I wonder if I'm addicted. I wonder...
Well, our view at Moment is that needs to be really decided by the individual. Okay. But I think the high level criteria are basically, do you feel good? If I listen to a book on tape that's about yoga, I feel pretty good about that in the near term. It's interesting. And I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to feel good about that next week because I'm going to have learned something. And maybe in the long term, I'm going to feel good because maybe I'll take up a different kind of yoga practice. But it's when I'm doing things, and it's analogous to food, right? It's like when I'm doing things that taste great right now, but definitely are not healthy for me in the medium and long term, that's unhealthy phone usage. And so, and again, I don't think abstinence is the answer. And so what we find is it's a little bit like portion control, in that, healthy usage is basically people using the phone for the utilitarian purposes, like how do I get to a place? How do I communicate with my friends and family? How do I look up a restaurant to go to tonight? Like that stuff, clearly healthy, fine. And then for the things that are more indulgent and more recreational, am I using it in a reasonable way? And am I using it in a way where I don't have feelings of guilt or regret or
feeling depressed?
Yeah,
and feeling like you're left out.
Yeah.
I worry that for a lot of young people, they're not learning communication skills the same way that the older generation did. I'm not saying that there weren't problems, in bygone eras, but because some kids were told, sit at the table, don't say anything. So I'm glossing over a lot of that. But just the idea of being able to communicate with somebody.
I think that's right. There's actually studies that they've shown where they've taken groups of kids who use their phone hours and hours a day, and they do tests on them to see to what degree can they see a picture of someone's face and understand what the emotion is. So in other words, it's a test of
reading people,
a test of empathy.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like they actually fall way below where they should be developmentally at that age. However, if they can reduce their usage to a much more reasonable place, in this study they did, and they were actually able to start to score on that test at kind of a reasonable level. So look, it's just the research is showing it's affecting people's capacity to relate to one another, show empathy for one another when it's used in excess and used in an unhealthy way.
I think I could do better, just since doing a little research about you and what you're trying to do and Moment. I think about where my phone is when I first get up in the morning. I think about the patterns of the way that I'm using my phone. And in times where I am struggling to focus on getting a task done, because the phone is on, because I hear a ping on my computer or my device. And so I've started to think a lot more about switching everything off.
What we have today is basically an app that really follows kind of the major tenets of cognitive behavioral therapy. to help people change behavior. And that's the modality that really, for all these behavioral addictions, has been the most effective over the last 20, 30 years. And so what it does is there's sort of three components to cognitive behavioral therapy. If I were to really, keep it high level, there's awareness, right? There's like, Phil, here's the deal. You spend this much time on your phone, you pick it up this much. So people, just awareness actually in and of itself can be very helpful to people. We have found with Moment, and there are a number of third parties who found this as well, people underestimate the amount of time they spend on their phone by about 50%.
That much?
So when someone who thinks, I only spend 2 hours of my 16 waking hours on my phone, finds out they spend 4, that's a sobering realization. And so that's really step one. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, that's kind of the self-monitoring. It's like, hey, Phil, here's the stark reality. The next piece is, and we help walk users through this, what do you think is healthy and what's not healthy? Like, in other words, what's the criteria you want to use? And then what are the goals that you want to set going forward? And then what are the tools that you need? And we have a bunch of these tools that do this, that keep you accountable. So there's kind of this awareness, guardrails, and then accountability.
Just walk us through the app. Like when you open it up,
Yeah.
what's the interface like?
Yeah, so there's a bit of an onboarding. We just ask you for a couple pieces of information. We actually have to track your location. That's how we figure out how much time you're spending on your phone. Unfortunately, we don't love that, but that's kind of the workaround to Apple's operating system, which is a tricky thing to navigate. We ask you a couple more pieces of information so we can help you. And then we're immediately tracking, giving you stats about your usage, mainly along the lines of how long are you spending on your phone on a daily basis? How's that trending over time? How often are you picking it up? How's that trending over time? And we also give you insights about how your stats look relative to
Other people,
which can be motivating or demoralizing depending on how you look at it. And then we offer a coach, and there are a bunch of different programs that people can use. Some of them are free, and there's a phone boot camp, for instance, that just walks you through kind of all the best practices for reducing phone usage. So there's another course that helps people with their attention spans.
Yeah.
So obviously these devices kill our attention spans and our focus, and so some people want to work on that, and we give them a course for that. There's a course that helps people with their sleep. There's a course that a whole family can enroll in that basically is a step-by-step process for...
That's a good one. I like the idea of the family one.
It is. I mean, and this is it's a family problem.
Yeah.
In that what we see is that many parents who are frustrated with their children's usage typically are heavy users themselves and don't have very good habits themselves.
Yeah.
And if we've done a bunch of research because we feel strongly about the family opportunity and problem. And if you look at other types of behavior change around diet or exercise or whatever, if you want your kids to change, you have to get the whole family to change.
Yeah.
That has been historically true with diet, with exercise, with other types of things, recycling, things that you want to change as a family unit. You actually have to do it as a collective. And we're seeing at Moment pockets of teenagers who are using Moment to actually create little contests with each other to try to see, hey, let's see in this group of 10 of us if we can spend less than an hour a day on our phones today. And they do it. And guess what? They feel better.
Yeah. Well, you've got me thinking about it, really, I tell you. So how is your addiction going? When was the last time you were in the pantry?
Mine's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty good. And what I find is like if I have a bad day, meaning I spend a couple hours on my phone and I'm not talking about email, I'm talking about, browsing the web or looking at YouTube.
Going down a rabbit hole.
Click.
I
don't feel good.
No.
I usually impacts my sleep. I'm usually a less pleasant person to be around. I'm usually just less happy that day. So it's sort of like if I binged on donuts. That's what I've started to get sensitive enough that's my experience. So I try to be really careful, but it's if it's a priority it unfortunately, because the forces that we're talking about in these services are really powerful.
They're very good at getting you to click on
talking about,
stuff.
I mean, I was near teams that were working on these things at Facebook and at Pinterest. We're talking about artificial intelligence that can really outwit you.
Yeah.
And figure out. And by the way, their sole objective, this artificial intelligence is told, get as much of Phil's time as possible at any cost. And that's what you're up against.
Am I paranoid, or am I seeing things that I'm talking about appear in my, just appear on my screen?
I think you're paranoid, but I hear a lot of people saying this, so I know I'm paranoid.
But honestly, I'll be talking about something, and then I'll see it come up, like an ad come up for the very thing I was talking about.
Yeah. Now, one possible explanation, which is where the AI is also scarily good, is you did enough stuff on the internet before you had this conversation, even though you didn't mention the specific tripod. They knew enough to kind of make the next leap.
Okay, so they may not be listening verbally, but they are listening with what we put into our searches.
And not just your searches. Every page that you browse, likely all the contents of your email.
Should we be paranoid about where this is all going?
God, if you'd asked me this a year ago, I probably would have said no.
But now you're saying yes?
I'm not sure we need to be paranoid, but I think we need to be really mindful. And I would not have said this a year ago. I think we need to be more mindful of our own data and who's using it and for what.
Wow.
Because these engines without data are incredibly powerful when pitted against a human being. Once it gets more and more data, it gets even more powerful. So it's not just the forces that are showing you ads, right? It's the forces that are just being told, maximize time spent, get Phil on there again and again. And what's being optimized is that push notifications being sent to you is being sent at a very precise time and second to optimize for when you're going to be most likely to pick up the phone and spend the most time.
So it's about taking back control, because right now people are losing control, and what we see and what we're being exposed to is dictated by other forces. And you're saying, no, hold on a second. You need to take control of your life. You need to reconnect, get back to the simple things.
Yeah.
So tips. What are some good tips for us to all be thinking about? I read one the other day. They said, don't plug your phone in next to your bed, because the tendency is to reach.
That moves the needle the most, we've found, is if you can keep your phone out of the bedroom at night and in the morning, you can probably move the needle the most on just raw usage numbers.
Okay.
I think the other thing is just pre-committing to an amount of time that you're just not going to use your phone. Like maybe at night when you're around your family. I try to do this from, call it 5:30 when I get home until when my kids are in bed around 7:30 or 8. I just won't, ideally, I'm not always perfect on this, ideally won't pick up my phone during that whole time, so that I'm completely present. And we have some tools at the moment that allow you to shut off, to have screen off time that's pre-programmed, as do some of the other tools that are out there. The analog solution that I think can be really helpful for dedicated time away from your phone it's called the Kitchen Safe. I think it's called the K-Safe now, and you can buy it on Amazon. And it's a safe that has a timer on it. It was originally built for dieting. Right. Because you put like muffins in there and set the thing for a day, and then you couldn't have the muffins for a day.
Well, wouldn't the muffin be stale?
Well,
all right. I'm sorry.
That's a good point.
Okay.
With the phone, you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And you can just put it in there, and you can set it for 2 hours, and there's no back door. I mean, you'd have to smash this thing. It's plastic, so presumably if there were an emergency, you could smash it and get into it. But it's pretty effective.
Comes with a sledgehammer.
And it leverages this psychological phenomenon that's pre-commitment, which is that when you pre-commit to something and then you're handcuffed to it, it's a pretty effective way to change behavior. So we have one, and we use it sometimes when our restraint is really challenged.
So in your household, you've seen a big improvement.
My wife and I have particularly just in terms of the two things I mentioned. Dedicated time off
Yes.
the phone, like get it out, put it in a different room, put it in
Be
a
focused
drawer.
on each other.
Be focused on each other, be focused on the kids, and then don't bring the phone in the bedroom.
I love the alarm clock on my phone, though. That's the only
Well,
one.
we can buy I'll buy you an alarm clock.
I'll get it's a terrible excuse. I'm just saying.
The other excuse people say, what if someone gets a hold of me? Well, you plug
Yeah.
it in right outside your door and turn the ringer on.
Yeah.
But make it, you need
Distance.
a little bit of resistance. You need a little bit of a barrier between you and that thing,
I had a breakthrough this morning.
which was,
I knew you were coming here, and I felt it's kind of like, you're going to the dentist and you brush your teeth vigorously, right? So, and you have the cleanest teeth.
believe I'm giving people this.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I did not touch my phone this morning until 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's big for me.
Yeah. And how'd it feel?
I felt good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really feel I want to change is the times that I'm checking email, because I tend to, and I've only just doing some research about what you've been talking about in behavior and so on. I realize that I tend to answer emails as they're coming in.
Absolutely.
And it seems to be now, I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, that is silly.
One of the worst things
Block
about
out
the
time.
phone is that we can basically act on almost anything in the moment that it occurs to us. And that's a problem. If you really want to be present, right, and keep
And
your
focused.
attention and focus in the moment. It used to be when we had desktops and no phones, we would batch, right? We would say, I got to do these 5 things on the internet, but they would just get queued up on a list or something, and then you go do them all at once. Yeah. And that was way better for us cognitively and in terms of just sense of peace, well-being, and not being anxious. Yeah. But this constant, I got to remember to buy this. I got to call this person. I got to text this person. That freneticism and unpredictability, every 10 minutes during the day, I think it just makes us psychologically unwell. We did this really cool thing over the holidays. My family was in town, my wife's family was in town, and in the main area, we have like this great room, which is a living, dining, kitchen. You couldn't have phones for the whole week. So if you wanted to be on your phone, that was fine, but you needed to go in your bedroom.
And now you're disconnected from everybody.
Now you're disconnected from everybody, which was fine. People did that every once in a while if they needed to do something. But the point was that in the common space, don't bring your device. Yeah. And just not having them there and no one being on them, the climate was different. It felt a lot better. I think we were more connected.
So as part of your team, do you have professional psychologists who maybe are who understand how the brain works, who are helping with the program?
So no, we don't have anyone full time, but we have a whole group of advisors who are behavioral psychologists, and then a number of behavioral economists who we talk to regularly and give us advice about our programming. I think as we get scale, we're absolutely going to need to bring those people in house. It's critical because we are giving people therapy, and we're going to need the expertise in house day to day. I think to get where we want to go.
What about your employees? How are they behaving at work? Are there rules that you have at moment? Like,
well, we have some norms, and one of them is that we no devices in meetings. So we're pretty strict about that, and it's okay to kind of shame each other if someone violates that. The other thing that's worth mentioning is we're really, really strict about disconnecting, and so we tell people, look, when you're done for the day, you're done for the day. We don't want people on email. We don't want people connecting and texting with each other. So when you leave, you're done until tomorrow morning. And we have the same philosophy on the weekends. So Friday night, we don't want you online.
And in America particularly, Americans work so hard. I mean, they don't take time off.
They don't.
You go look at elsewhere in the world, they'll have 6 weeks leave a year.
Yeah.
They really just switch off.
They just I think in the United States, and certainly in Silicon Valley, there's just a belief that success can't possibly happen unless you're always on. They can't quite get their head around the idea that maybe if we took a break and stepped back and actually, rejuvenated, maybe we would be more effective. And I think there's a similar attitude about sleep as well in Silicon Valley, and certainly in lots of the finance realms, right? Which is like, we don't need to sleep. We'll sleep when we're dead.
what do your old bosses think about what you're doing?
Well, Ben at Pinterest loves it.
Really?
And I've not talked to Mark about it. I mean, I actually think I would suspect that if I talked to him, he would say, I think this is good. I think we need this, because he's publicly acknowledged that there's a health challenge in terms of people spending too much time on his service and other services, and that he has a role to play in that. So it's sort of funny to talk about social media, given what we all talked about. You can follow us at I told my colleague I would say the name, so I gotta stay true to my commitment.
Yeah,
so in the moment app is our handle on Instagram. So in the moment app, and then you can find us in the App Store.
What is on in the moment? Like what on Instagram? What do you got? Shots of people being in the moment.
we try to share articles and best practices.
I just took this photograph in the moment very quickly to show you that I was in the moment.
We struggle with whether or not we should even.
Well, I think you have to.
That's where we came out, but
Yeah, but I mean, maybe the photographs are great ways of showing, hey, look, I'm in the moment, and I'm savoring the moment.
One of the features that we do have on Moment that we just launched in December, which is pretty cool, and we get a couple thousand people using it a week, is you can actually auto post from Moment to Instagram to say that you are going into Moment mode, which basically means that you are getting offline for a predetermined amount of time, and you publish that out to everybody.
Hashtag Moment mode.
Yeah.
Moment mode.
That's right.
I'm going to be away on moment mode.
Don't bother me.
That's a good hashtag.
Yeah.
Moment mode.
Yeah.
And you just say, listen.
Maybe it'll catch on now.
Don't expect to hear from me for the next 12 hours. I am in moment mode.
Right.
All right. Well, speaking of being in the moment, the future. We're in the moment now, but just look ahead a little bit to where you see all of this going. Do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better? Are we at the top of the bell curve, or are we coming down the other side? What's going on?
I'm really excited about what we have a vision for building. I mean, we've certainly built something, but I think if we could give to people, a service that really could act on their behalf, to self-actualize on their behalf, and help them behave in ways that are really in their best interest, and not in the best interests of the bottom lines of some of these big tech companies, that would be a really powerful gift. And so I get excited about that, and I get excited about the next upcoming months and years, because I think we're going to start to deliver more and more on that.
Well, thanks for helping us to all get more moments.
Yeah,
because I think we need them.
I agree.
I usually end the podcast with a couple of questions.
Okay.
One is, if you were going to take a road trip across America and you could take 3 passengers with you from any time in history, alive or dead, and it was just you and 3 people.
Buddha, for sure. My new advisor.
Yep.
Nelson Mandela.
Yep.
And Barack Obama. I'm just a sucker for him and what he stands for.
That would be an amazing car ride.
Yeah.
Permission to put cameras in the car. Would that be all right?
You'll have to ask them.
Okay. See if they'll
They have a
sign
lot
off.
more to lose than I do.
Okay, and then your last day on Earth. If you were going to make a real moment out of your last day on Earth, what would you do with that day?
Well, I'd be in the water on a boat with everybody I loved.
Big boat then.
Big boat.
Yeah.
And maybe I would be in really cold water, because I love plunging into cold water. So let's say a big boat with everyone I love off of Antarctica.
What? Wow, you do love cold water. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. To see more great interviews, go to philkeoghan.com and subscribe to BUCKiT with Phil Keoghan wherever you get your podcasts. Please consider rating and reviewing us. And follow BUCKiT, that's BUCKiT with an IT, on Instagram and Facebook. Also, follow me on Twitter @PhilKeoghan. See you soon.